Hello students, today we will be studying the development of the male genital system. So in this our specific learning objectives are you should be able to explain the development of testes and you should be able to explain the embryological basis of hypospadiasis and epispadiasis. Then you should be able to explain the development of other male genital organs with the associated anomalies. So, firstly, the development of indifferent gonads. So, during the first 6 weeks, when the embryo remains sexually indifferent, so it is known as undifferentiated stage. So, this means the genetically female embryos and genetically male embryos they are phenotypically indistinguishable. That is, we cannot recognize them in sonography whether it is a male child or a female child. So now what is the source of gonads? So there are three sources of gonads. First one is the mesothelium lining or the mesodermal epithelium which is lining the posterior abdominal wall. Then the second one is the underlying mesenchyme or the embryonic connective tissue, and the third one is the primordial germ cells. So all these three are the sources of gonads, that is mesothelium, underlying mesenchyme, and the primordial germ cells. So how these primordial germ cells they originate and they reach their definitive site. So what are the primordial germ cells? These are the large spherical sex cells which are originating in the umbilical vesicle, and they are visible around fourth week of intrauterine life, and from there they will migrate along the dorsal mesentery of the hindgut, and they will reach the gonadal ridges. So during the sixth week, the primordial germ cells enter the underlying mesenchyme. This is the underlying mesenchyme, and they are incorporated in the gonadal cords. So gonadal cords they are derived from this mesothelium, the lining mesothelium, in which the germ cells they are being incorporated. So primordial germ cells are endodermal in origin, whereas our gonads they are mesodermal in origin. So this migration of the primordial germ cells it is regulated by certain genes. So they are Stella, Fragilis, and PMP4. Now the proliferation of this epithelium over here, this epithelium and the underlying mesenchyme produces a bulge on the medial side of the mesonephros. So this bulge it is known as gonadal ridge. Now there is finger-like over here. You can see these are finger-like epithelial cords. These are known as gonadal cords. They will soon grow from this epithelium into this underlying mesenchyme. So indifferent gonad now it now consists of an external cortex and an internal medulla. So now the fate of the gonads it depends whether the embryo it is an XX sex chromosome complex. So if it is a female, then the cortex of the indifferent gonad it differentiates into an ovary and the medulla regresses. And if it is a male child, that is it is an XY sex chromosome is complex is there, then the medulla it differentiates into testes and the cortex regresses except for the vestigial remnants. So this is a summary of the sex determination of the gonad formation. That is, the key to the sexual dimorphism is on the Y chromosome, which contains a testis determining factor, which is known as SRY gene, which is situated on the short arm of Y chromosome. So, under this influence, influence of the testis determining factor, the testis develops. That is, the gonadal cords they differentiates into the seminiferous cords. Now, if it is female, then there is absence of this Y gene. So there is an absence of this testis determining factor. So there is absence of Mullerian inhibiting hormone and other testosterone and other hormones as well. So now it will lead to the gonads will form ovary. So now we will come to the development of the testis. So we know that the key inducing factor for the testis formation is the testis determining factor, that is SRY gene. So TDF, it induces the gonadal cords to condense and extend into the interior, that is the medulla of the indifferent gonad, where they branch and they form the rete testis. Now the connection of this gonadal cords and the seminiferous cords with the surface, it is lost in the due course of the time, and there is a formation of thick fibrous capsule which is known as tunica albuginea. So this tunica albuginea, it is a characteristic feature of the testicular development which is not there in the ovarian development, right? Because the medullary cords are being developed, cortex is regressed, so it is giving rise over here to the tunica albuginea, whereas in the ovary, the cortex is mainly forming and the medulla regresses. So tunica albuginea, it is more prominent in testicular development. Now gradually there is enlargement of this testis and it separates this from the developing this. This is mesonephric duct. So there is mesonephros also in the vicinity. So it becomes suspended by its own mesentery, which is known as mesorchium. So the seminiferous cords, they develop into the seminiferous tubules, the tubula recti, the retitestis. So all these are developing from this gonadal cords cells. Now next is the formation of the Leydig cells. So the seminiferous tubules, they are separated by the mesenchyme and that give rise to the interstitial cells. So interstitial cells, they the source is the underlying mesenchyme, right? So the gonadal cords, they were derived from the mesothelium. They have migrated inside into the medulla, and the mesenchyme present over here is giving rise to the interstitial cells of Leydig, which will uh, produce the testosterone. So by 8th week, these cells begin to secrete androgenic hormones, testosterone and androstenedione, which induces masculine differentiation of the mesonephric ducts and the external genitalia. Then the anti-Mullerian hormone. Anti-Mullerian hormone, it is also known as Mullerian inhibiting substance. Now, the anti-Mullerian hormone is produced by sustentacular cells or the Sertoli cells of the seminiferous tubules, which continues to the puberty, and after which the levels of the AMH decreases. Now, what is Mullerian inhibiting hormone doing? It is regressing this paramesonephric duct or the Mullerian duct, which is the main genital duct of the female genital system. So AMH suppresses the development of the paramesonephric ducts. So now we have seen that over here in this diagram, the Mullerian duct, it has been regressed and only the remnant is there, that is in the form of appendix of testis. So, because of the testosterone and the Mullerian inhibiting substance, the mesonephric duct, it remains in the male child and it will form the male genital system along with this gonadal ridge. Now the seminiferous tubules. So they seminiferous tubule, they remain solid until puberty, and after which the lumina begins to develop. So the walls of the seminiferous tubules, they are composed of two types of cells: the Sertoli cells and the spermatogonia. The Sertoli cells are the supporting cells, and they are derived from the surface epithelium of the testis, and they are secreting Mullerian inhibiting substance. And the spermatogonia are the primordial germ cells. These are endodermal in origin. You have to remember this. This is a repeated MCQ which is being asked. Now the different parts of the testis and their source of origin. So the seminiferous tubules and the retitestis, they are derived from the medulla of the genital ridge, that is the sex cords cells. Then the interstitial cells of the Leydig, the fibrous septa and the covering, that is the tunica albuginea, that is formed by the mesenchymal condensation of the genital ridge. Then the efferent tubules, these are the efferent tubules, So 12 to 15 mesonephric tubules will give rise to the efferent tubules. Then is the canal of epididymis and the vas deferens. It is given by the mesonephric duct. Then the appendix of testis is given or formed by the, it is a remnant of paramesonephric duct, and the appendix of epididymis is the remnant of mesonephros. So all these are the different components of the testis with their embryological source. Now the testis, as it is developing in the abdomen, it has to descend to come out of the abdominal cavity. So testis, it develops in the dorsal abdominal wall at the level of upper lumbar vertebrae. Now during the development, testis descends slowly from lumbar region to the scrotal region. So after birth, testis lies outside the body. So during the third month, it reaches the iliac fossa. Then at sixth month, it reaches the deep inguinal ring, and at seventh month, it reaches the superficial. It travels through the inguinal canal, and at the end of eighth month, it reaches the superficial inguinal ring, and by ninth month, it reaches the scrotum. So this is the whole journey of the testis through the abdomen and the pelvis to reach the scrotum. So because of this descent, there is formation of the inguinal canal. So what are the factors which are assisting the descent of the testis? So the first one is the differential body wall growth. Then is the formation of the inguinal bursae. Then is the gubernaculum of the testis. Now this is a mesenchymal condensation which is present in the abdomen, and it has got a special role in the descent of testis. Then is the processus vaginalis. Then there is an increased abdominal pressure, male sex hormones, higher abdominal temperature, and the contraction of the cremaster muscle. All these are the sources which are all these are the factors which are responsible for the descent of testes. Now we will come to the development of the male genital ducts and glands. So fetal testes, they produce masculinizing hormones, that is testosterone and Mullerian inhibiting substance. And the Sertoli cells, they begin to produce Mullerian inhibiting substance at around 6 to 7 weeks. The interstitial cells, they begin to produce testosterone at around 8th week. So testosterone, the production of which is stimulated by human chorionic gonadotropin, stimulates the mesonephric duct to form the male genital ducts. And Mullerian inhibiting substance, it causes the paramesonephric ducts to disappear. So we have already seen this. So what is the effect of the male hormone? This is the paramesonephric duct or the Mullerian duct. It is disappearing under the effect of MIS, and this is the mesonephric duct. Now the proximal part of this mesonephric duct, it starts becoming highly convoluted. So it gives rise to the convoluted part of the epididymis. Then as the mesonephros degenerate, soon the mesonephric tubules, they will persist and they are transformed into the efferent ductules. Excuse me. Then these ductules, they open into the duct of epididymis. Then the distal of the epididymis, the mesonephric duct, it acquires a thick investment of the smooth muscles and it becomes ductus deferens. So vas deferens, epididymis, and efferent ductules, these all are the remnants of mesonephric, or these are all formed from the mesonephric duct. While appendix of testis, it is contributed by Mullerian duct, whereas the appendix of epididymis, it is formed by mesonephros. Now the formation of seminal glands. So seminal gland, over here you can see this one is the seminal gland. So it is a lateral outgrowth from the caudal end of each mesonephric duct. Okay, so the part of the mesonephric duct which is between the gland and the urethra, it becomes the ejaculatory duct. So this one is the ejaculatory duct, which is part between the seminal glands and the urethra. So ejaculatory duct and the seminal glands, they are also uh, derived from the mesonephric ducts. Then we'll come to the prostrate. Now, multiple endodermal outgrowths arise from the prostatic part of the urethra. So, prostatic part of the urethra, it is derived from the urogenital sinus. So, the secretory part of the prostate, it is endodermal in origin. So, the glandular epithelium of the prostate, it differentiates from the endodermal cells, it is endodermal in origin, and the associated mesenchyme. It differentiates into the dense stroma and smooth muscle of the prostate. So that is mesodermal. So prostate, the secretory part is endodermal, rest of the tissue it is mesodermal in origin. Then comes to the bulbourethral glands. So these are pea-sized structures which develop as paired outgrowths from the spongy part of the urethra. So that is also endodermal in origin because it is a part of urogenital sinus. Now, the smooth muscle fibers in the stoma, they differentiate from the adjacent mesenchyme. So, excuse me, the secretions of these glands contribute to the semen. Now, the development of male external genitalia. Now, the development of external genitalia results from the proliferation of the mesoderm around the cloacal membrane. So it causes the overlying ectoderm to give rise up to three structures. One is phallus or the genital tubercle, followed by the urogenital folds, and more lateral to it is the labioscrotal swellings. So the genital tubercle or the phallus, it contributes to the formation of glans penis. Over here is the glans penis. Then is the corpora cavernosa and the corpus spongiosum. The urogenital folds, they on the ventral aspect, they will form the penile raphe, and the labioscrotal swellings, they forms the scrotum. So now we'll see the development of the male urethra. Now, in under the influence of the testosterone, the phallus, it enlarges and elongates to become the penis, and the urethral folds form the lateral walls of the urethral groove, right, on the ventral surface of the penis. So over here you can see the urethral, these are the urethral folds. They will also try and they will start fusing on the ventral side. Now, as the phallus enlarges, it takes uh, with it the underlying epithelium also. So this groove, it is lined by the proliferation of the endodermal cells, which forms the urethral plate. Okay, why? Because the phallic part of the urogenital sinus was also contributing to the spongy urethra, and that was endodermal in origin, right? So this groove, it is lined by the proliferation of endodermal cells, and this proliferation of endodermal cell is known as urethral plate, which extends from the phallic portion of the urogenital sinus to this developing portion, right? So the urethral folds, they will start fusing with each other along the midline on the ventral surface to form the spongy urethra. So the surface ectoderm fuses in the median plane of the penis and forms the penile raphe. So like this penile raphe, it is being formed on the ventral surface by the fusion of the two urethral folds, and this will lead to enclosing of the spongy urethra. Now the tip of the glans penis, an ectodermal outgrowth or an ectodermal ingrowth, forms a cellular ectodermal cord which grows towards the root of the penis to meet the spongy urethra. So that is why the terminal part, it is ectodermal in origin of the spongy urethra. Excuse me. So after the whole of the urethra is formed, the cord canalizes and its lumen joins the previously formed spongy urethra. And this completes the terminal part of the urethra and moves the external urethral orifice to the tip of the glands of the penis. Now the labioscrotal swellings, they also grow towards each other and they will fuse to form the scrotum. So the line of fusion of these folds is clearly visible as the scrotal raphe. Now, certain associated conditions are the epispadiasis, which is often associated with the extrophy of the bladder, which is main result of the inadequate ectodermal mesenchymal interactions during development of the genital tubercle. So, as a consequence, the genital tubercle develops more dorsally than in normal embryos. So, when the urogenital membrane ruptures, the urogenital sinus opens on the dorsal surface of the penis. So, urine is expelled at the root of the malformed penis. So, what is epispadiasis? It is an abnormal opening of the urethra on the dorsal surface of the penis instead of the terminal surface. This is the usual opening. Then is a term which is hypospadiasis. In this, the fusion of the urethral fold is incomplete. ठीक है, उसमें क्या था? There was the inadequate ectodermal mesenchymal interaction during development of genital tubercle. It develops more dorsally, right? And over here, hypospadiasis, it is because of the abnormal fusion of the urethral folds. So it results in incomplete or abnormal openings of the urethra along the ventral aspect. So it may be at the in the glands. So it is known as glandular. Then at the uh, base of the glands, it is known as balanic. Then along the shaft, it is known as penile hypospadiasis. Then at the base of the scrotum, that is known as penoscrotal hypospadiasis. Next condition is hydrocele. So whenever there is a small patency of this processus vaginalis, so there is a remain of peritoneal fluid which can flow into this processus vaginalis and it results into a fluid filled cyst near the testis. Excuse me. Such condition is known as hydrocele. So there is a typical case scenario I would like to share with you all. A 2-year-old male toddler is admitted to the hospital with the testicular pain, and the physical examination reveals an enlarged scrotum. An otoscope, this is an otoscope with a light, is placed beneath the lateral side of the scrotum, and the testis is trans-illuminated through the scrotal sac. Which of the following best describes the signs observed in this patient? So, this hydrocele, it is characteristically translucent. So, this diagnoses a case of hydrocele. There is congenital inguinal hernia. It occurs when a large patent processus vaginalis is there. So, intestinal loop, it may herniate through it and reach till scrotum or labia majora. So, that is known as congenital inguinal hernia. Then, if the testis fail to descend, then the condition is known as cryptorchidism. It can be bilateral or unilateral. So descent of the testis is evident within 3 months after birth. So if it fails to descend, it may result in sterility. So the undescended testis, it may be found in abdominal cavity or in the inguinal canal. Excuse me. So this is another case scenario. A 1-year-old male infant is admitted to the pediatric clinic because his parents could not palpate his testis in the scrotum. So the pediatrician examines the infant and palpates the testis in the inguinal canal. So which of the following best describes this condition? So this is an example of cryptorchidism. There is the ectopic testis, in which the testis is found apart from its normal path of descent. So it may be found in femoral region, in the scrotal region, in the perineal region, in the penile region, in front of the pubic symphysis, or in the abdomen elsewhere from its normal path of descent. So this is known as ectopic testis. And if it is along its normal course of descent, then it is known as undescended testis. So both are different conditions. Then, so if it is an ectopic testis which is outside, it may be replaced. It has to be done immediately. The correction has to be done immediately. Else, it may result in the formation of testicular tumors. Then there are certain female pseudo intersexuality and the male intersexuality. So most common, only I'll be discussing over here. So most common is the congenital adrenal hyperplasia. So the female pseudo intersexuality is a condition when there is only ovarian tissue histologically and masculinization of the female external genitalia. So in this, the individual genotype is 46XS, XX, and but there is excess of androgens. Why? Because it is associated with the deficiency of 21 hydroxylase enzyme or alpha 11 alpha hydroxylase enzyme. So that is the gene. It is located on the chromosome 6, on the on its short arm. So there are elevated levels of androgens, which leads to masculinization of a female fetus. So what are the clinical findings? It is associated with mild clitoral enlargement, complete labioscrotal fusion with the phalloid organ, and macrogenitosmia in the male fetus. Then other symptoms may be precocious puberty, virilization, and infertility. Now, why this happens? Because cortisol, it cannot be synthesized. So there is no negative feedback to the adenohypophysis. So ACTH, the adrenocorticotropic hormone, it contributes to stimulate the adrenal cortex. It results in adrenal hyperplasia. And similarly, there is no aldosterone also. So because in the absence of these two enzymes, these two hormones, the patient, it also presents with hyponatremia, that is salt wasting, with accompanying dehydration and hyperkalemia. So certain picture, if it is given to you, that a patient with the hyponatremia, dehydration, and hyperkalemia, with the precocious puberty and virilization. So if you have to give your diagnosis, then it is a example of congenital adrenal hyperplasia or the female pseudo intersexuality. Another condition is male pseudo intersexuality, in which it is a androgen insensitivity syndrome. The genotype is 46XY. So, but there is lack of androgen receptors. So, the tissues fail to respond to the dihydrotestosterone complexes. So, there is defective virilization of the male fetus. So, the patient does have a testis and Mullerian inhibiting substance is present, but so the paramesonephric system gets suppressed, but there is defective virilization because of the absence of the receptors. Then there is 5 alpha reductase deficiency, which is also cause of ambiguous genitalia in males. Now that's all. In the next class, we'll study about the development of ovaries.